The climate crisis is a crisis born of injustice, and it is a crisis born of the pursuit of profit at any and all human and ecological cost. That's right. Which means that we must recognize in legislation that the trampling of indigenous rights is a cause of climate change. The trampling of racial justice is a cause of climate change, because we are allowing people and we are allowing ourselves to we are allowing folks to deny ourselves human rights and deny people the right to health care, the right to housing and education.
Have you ever heard so much BS in your life? Hey, this is Gene. Welcome to Dumbasses Talking Politics. You may notice my background's a little different. I'm actually in Los Angeles. One of the reasons I didn't do a podcast the other day, but I did promise this, and I swore to God I would get it out. Let's talk about the environment. Let's talk about AOC, who basically just, I don't know, this was the biggest example of word vomit that you could ever see. This was, what did she say? What? So the environment, environmental injustice, indigenous people. Here's the problem with liberals. Leftists, they're not even liberals. I know a lot of liberals. Here's the problem with leftists. Leftists just use nothing but platitudes. They use nothing but terms. And those terms are what they live on. And everyone is nodding their head like a bunch of freaking idiots because they figure, oh, environmental justice, indigenous peoples, crap like that. And by the way, she didn't say anything. As a matter of fact, she stumbled several times because she didn't say anything. But there is one person that knows all, especially when it comes to the environment. That is Greta Thunberg. Yes, or Swedish or Norwegian or whatever she is, 10th grader. Well, no. I'm sorry. She's 18 years old. We can make fun of her right now. But she's 18 years old, but she has a 10th grade education explaining to all us adults about how the world is going to end. It's our fault. It's our fault. And she is going in front of people and telling us that it's all our fault, and she plays on emotion and the whole thing. My fiance's daughter sat back and said, "Oh man, she scared me because of what she said." I said, "She scared you because she just is saying things to scare you. She's not bringing up any facts. There is nothing in there but the world's gonna end, we're all gonna die, we're all gonna drown, blah, blah, blah." Well, here's the problem. Eventually, she's gonna find someone who's gonna sit there and say, "Where did you come up with that crap?" And this is what this representative actually did. Okay, so Greta Thunberg is sitting back in front of Congress. She's talking about this climate crap that she always talks about, and she runs into a Republican representative that I guess has more than a 10th grade education, probably an 11th grade education, probably doesn't have Down syndrome or Asperger's syndrome. By the way, she's 18, so I can make fun of her now. All right? In other words, he's not a retard, and he's asking her questions. All right? And I mean, you got to understand, this was the broad that sat back and told us, "How dare you, rah, rah, rah." I'm probably going to put that in here someplace. And then had the audacity to go in front of the UN last week and tell us how the reason climate change was all of the United States' fault. Again, China and India are almost double our CO2 production for countries, but she doesn't bother them at all. So let's listen to how this guy actually deals with this fraud. And you can see the reason I put AOC's comments in the beginning kind of shows you why this kind of leads up to Greta Thunberg, who, by the way, was far more relevant than AOC just 5 years ago. Let's listen.
My time has elapsed, so I recognize you for your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Thunberg, thank you for your involvement here today. I commend you for your willingness to testify and get involved with public policy. In the past, when you're talking about climate change, you have said, quote, "I want you to panic. I want you to feel the fear I feel every day." Is there what particular study or scientific report did you read that made you come to this conclusion?
Thank you for your question. First of all, let me just clear that those are metaphors. In speeches, you often use metaphors. Of course, I don't mean literally that I want people to panic. So there was no scientific study that made me come to that conclusion.
Oh, okay, so you didn't say that.
I did, but it's the metaphor that you often use in speeches.
Metaphor for what? I mean, how do you, what I'm asking on panic, I want you to panic. What does that, tell me what you meant by that?
By that, I mean that I want people to step out of their comfort zones. And to not just see the climate crisis as a far distant threat, but rather as something that is impacting people already today. And people to step out of their comfort zones to start taking real action.
Okay.
By the way, my dad's right here right now. I'm at his place in Los Angeles, and he could sit with me and listen to this. He's listening to the conversations. I just want to give him a thumbs up. This is like a vacation for me. So this is an awesome thing. But I do want to point out a couple of things with her. First off, she doesn't know anything about science. She doesn't know anything about the reports. The UN report in 2018 basically gave 50 to 60 different scenarios of what could happen during the climate crisis. In 2018, the Nobel Prize winners, they were climate economists, said that the 2 degrees Celsius limit that's being pushed by Democrats is actually a very soft limit. They brought up that it's probably 3.5 degrees Celsius and that we would not be actually looking at that as a problem till about 2100, between 2100 and 2110. And then it would cost us 3% GDP worldwide to actually solve that problem. I think this is one of the things this guy was looking for because he knew this already. Greta Thunberg, I know she's got a 10th grade education, and their education system in Sweden, Norway, wherever the hell she's from, is so much better than the United States education system. But here's the thing: I've got a U.S. citizen. I've got a U.S. education system. I'm able to read reports. Okay. Second thing: if she had gone beyond the 10th grade in Norway, she'd know what a metaphor was. I am a tree because I am the strength against the wind. Me being the tree is a metaphor. You need to panic is not a metaphor for I want you to take this seriously. No, it is you want people to panic. This is the thing with the left. It drives me crazy. It's being pointed out, but it's being hidden. It is being hidden. The reality of the matter is panic is what the left has. Climate is panic porn. Oh, the world's going to end in 10 years. I'll give you a little trick, little information. They were telling me the world was going to end in 10 years back in the 80s. This whole World's Day bullshit that we go through all the time, they said that back in the 80s. They said it in the 90s, we were going to die in 10 years. Al Gore won an Oscar saying the same bloody thing in 2006. Or when did he lose the election? 2004, excuse me. He lost the election in 2000. 2004 is when he made that absolute crap piece of garbage movie. She's full of crap. She doesn't know what she's talking about. And this guy is basically saying, okay, prove it. Hey, this is from the party of science, yeah? And he's basically saying, use science. But it gets better. Oh my God. he's gonna bone this gal more often than she knows. And by the way, he can bone her because she's 18 and she's legal. So now we can make fun of her and make comments like that. So let's get to the next question. So science doesn't know. Science doesn't work like that. He's asking a specific question. What are the parts per millions of CO2 that need to be stopped being released into the atmosphere? Oh, but science doesn't work like that. Bullshit. I smell bullshit. She doesn't know because she doesn't know anything about science. Science does work like that. Science does work like that. Science says that if we have this much in the atmosphere, and if we release this much CO2 per day, per hour, per minute, this could damage the environment. That is called science. And by the way, it may not be 100% accurate because nothing's 100% accurate, but it is closer to the truth than, oh, science doesn't work like that. Why don't you give him a number? Why don't you give her a number? And by the way, I love this crap, as you know. Well, science doesn't necessarily work like that. There is no hard number, as you know. No. He doesn't know. That's why he's asking you the question. And here's the other thing. You know what's not hard science? Is that the 2 degrees Celsius thing in the next 100 years is going to destroy the entire world. That's not hard science either. I've heard everywhere from 0.5 degrees Celsius to 4 degrees Celsius. The Nobel Prize winners, who I guess use the science that she says isn't perfect, said it could be anywhere from 2 degrees Celsius to 4 degrees Celsius. And we just don't know. And by the way, since 1875, when we started doing actual atmospheric study, we've noticed that the temperature has fluctuated. In other words, sometimes we're at 2.5 degrees Celsius and the next year we're back down to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Anthropological climatologists said we were going to experience a mini ice age between 2008 and 2014. Look it up, it's there. And guess what? The average temperature of the Earth actually lowered by a degree Celsius between 2008 and 2014. I live in California. It's very common we have 100-degree weather. Between those years, we didn't have 100-degree weather. You know why? We were in a mini. Here's the whole thing. The left loves science until they have to use science. And then science isn't perfect. Okay, let's go to our next section.
You would name a particular number. What about China, India, the other countries where there's if this bill passes, there's no retribution against these countries that's going to offset anything we do here in America? What is your take on that?
Well, if we just thought like that, it would be very convenient, wouldn't it? But rather we need to see the holistic perspective. How can we, if we take, for example, India as an example, how can we expect India to take action when the developed countries who have actually promised to lead the way won't do that? If we take into account the global aspect of equity, I mean, there are many people around the world who need to be able to raise their standard of living. And if we who live in high income countries aren't able to take a few steps back in order to let other people raise their living standard, then, I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. And of course, those countries definitely need to take their responsibility as well. And that's why we need global cooperation. And if countries won't take action, then there's no global cooperation. If the US, for example, which is the biggest emitter in history, won't take action, then how can we expect other countries to do that? So taking action ourselves is also a guarantee that other countries, I mean, it will be a snowball effect, most likely. If one country does something, then other countries will follow. If no country does something, then no one will follow.
Okay.
This is the big question. What about China and India? By the way, the United States is like third, maybe fourth in the CO2 emissions. We have cut our CO2 emissions by 30% in the last 15 years. You don't believe me? Drive through LA. Take a look. I bet you can breathe and not cough. LA in the 1970s and 80s was black. It was, well, brown, kind of a reddish brown, because we had huge amounts of smog, huge amounts of pollution. We killed it. It's gone. Los Angeles, probably the most polluted city in North America, is no longer the most polluted city in North America. By the way, what's the most polluted city in North America right now? Mexico City. Mexico City by a long shot. Mexico City is polluting more than freaking half the countries in the world. And she's basically, what she's doing is she's blaming the US for climate change. You know why? Because we're dumb enough, we're gonna listen. That's what it comes down to. We're gonna sit back and listen to this dumb broad. Now, this representative, Republican representative, I mean, basically screwed her. And she really didn't have any kind of answers to it. But what she is suggesting is that the United States needs to lower its standard of living in order to raise the standard of living in other countries and yet not create CO2. Here's a news flash. Last I heard, we are all, isn't it sound pretty out here? Get over it. Last I heard, CO2 was gonna kill all of us. So shouldn't everybody kill the CO2? Including China, who, by the way, the last I checked, they were, my dad's sitting next to me, but I know he won't answer. The last I checked, they were competitive with us economically. So why are they not lowering their CO2? They've got the same economy we do right now. And we've actually, as a matter of fact, the reason China has caught up is because we've lowered our standards and we don't allow CO2 into the air. Right? He's nodding. That's good. I'm sorry, he's gonna hate me, but he's smiling, so we're okay. So by the way, if CO2 is that much of a danger, everyone should cut it out, period, end of story. By the way, here's something wild and crazy, but gas, coal, is keeping people alive. In Africa, they're burning cow dung to keep alive. People are dying from carbon monoxide poisoning from burning cow dung in their houses. So you want to sit back and you want to talk about, hey, let's kill off all of the CO2 emissions? Well, first off, you're going to have to sit there and realize people will die. There's a reason CO2 emissions. And here's the other thing that drives me crazy, and she doesn't bring this up, but capitalism actually has really helped the United States. You know why? People don't want to burn oil. I don't want to burn oil. I think oil is actually a very valuable resource. It's a fantastic lubricant. We can use oil for a lot of more important things than just burning up cars. Hold on. Plastics. Everything today is made of plastics. And by the way, I know you saw me look down. This is the beauty of a VCast. I'm not editing crap. My dad is sitting there. What about plastic? Yeah, computers. Hello, China's making computers. Where do you think computers are made? By the way, Tesla. Where do you think they get the parts for their cars? From oil-based resources. The reality is we need to, and these people, they don't think about, let's say, nuclear, which puts out no carbon emissions, by the way. Or what's the other one? Natural gas, fracking, puts out very little carbon emissions. We can't have that, we can't have nuclear, but we can't have coal, oil, or gas. So what are we supposed to use? We already talked about wind and solar, which are 7% efficient. It's insane. And finally, probably the last thing, globalism sucks. I am sick and tired of hearing about globalism. Here's something wild and crazy. I know this is not, I should be saying we are the world and bullshit like that. We are not a globalist world. We are nationalists. China is a nationalist country. India is a nationalist country. Mexico, they are nationalists. They don't give a damn about the rest of the world. It seems to be that the United States, who's forgotten how we got so wealthy and become the best nation in the world. I'm sorry, best nation in human history, most technological nation in human history, most richest nation in human history. People have forgot freest nation in human history. People have forgotten how we got that, because we were all nationalists. I'm not saying white nationalists. I'm not saying white supremacists. I'm saying nationalists. If that dumb gal can sit there and say, well, we need a globalist answer, I can say, no, we don't need a globalist answer. We need to stick to our nationalist, what would you call it? Not answer, but our nationalist path that we've been taking for the last 243 years. Oh my gosh. Okay, here's the last clip. And the last clip, because I'm done with this. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I'm beginning to drag on.
So China is an example, which is a communist. They practice genocide on their people. They will watch America and then will just voluntarily reduce their emissions. Is that your thoughts?
No, I mean, we should do, of course, everything we can to make sure that China takes the responsibility. But I mean, there is not really much. I mean, all I can do is to try to advocate for global change. All you can do is to take action and try to create a global pressure on China so that they will have to take action. As you say, we can't just go there and ask them to do it. That would be very nice, but yeah, we need to think realistically.
Do you hear her? China's just going to change. They're just going to say, "Oh, hey, we're done." Oh, the United States is doing it. So, hey, here's a newsflash for Miss Greta. With the 10th grade education and with Asperger's syndrome. No, China's our enemy. They don't care about us. They love the fact that we actually listen to her. They love that we listen to her. And meanwhile, while we're sticking our thumbs up our butts and trying to add 765 solar panels on our deal, just on our roofs, just so that we can pay the same amount of electricity that we would have last month before we added the solar panels on our roofs, and that we can't turn on the TV because it's been kind of cloudy for the last 2 weeks and we didn't get any electricity. China is doing everything they need to do to make themselves the new superpower. And I got news for you. You can sit back and look at superpowers as empires, imperialistic, blah, blah, blah. The United States has never been imperialistic. That's all a crap that Howard Zinn writes about. The United States is the safest superpower in the history of man because we actually give a crap. And strength is everything. And in order to continue being that moral, ethical superpower, moral based off the Judeo-Christian philosophy that the Constitution defined, ethical being based off the Greek reason that was defined by Aristotle, that Thomas Jefferson mashed together. And by the way, Thomas Jefferson, he didn't quite plagiarize, but this was crap that happened at that 1619 Project garbage. I know I'm going off, Dad. I'm sorry. But that 1619 Project they talk about, the Pilgrims had the same philosophy as Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson took our philosophy and bound it together. This is what drives me absolutely apeshit about the 1619 Project. It's an absolute lie about our founding. It's an absolute lie about our founding. And all this BS that she's talking about, this globalist, socialist, communist, totalitarian, fascist, tyrannical crap that she's talking about, she's saying we need the European Union, which has turned out to be an absolute disaster and is the example of a fascist dictatorship, and people are now leaving them because they don't want to deal with this anymore. She wants that over the entire world. And there's one thing that she did say: we have to be realistic. What a disturbing statement. Do you know what we have to be realistic about? That all her BS ideas were talked about in China, they were talked about in the Soviet Union, they were talked about in Venezuela, they were talked about in Cuba, they were talked about in North Korea, they were talked about in North Vietnam. You see where I'm going? All her BS reality has already been tried and it has failed. You know what the reality is? She's living in the fantasy world. Let's call it what it is. You know what the reality is? The reality is she doesn't know what she's talking about, and I think she needs to spend some time over in Venezuela. I think she needs to spend some time in Cuba. I think Antifa needs to spend some time in those places. I think BLM needs to spend... BLM, who is a Marxist organization, admittedly Marxist organization. Go spend some time in Venezuela. They are an openly Marxist country. North Korea is openly Marxist. Oh, frick. Cuba? Completely Marxist. They don't even call themselves communists. They are Marxists. And then maybe the next time I see that t-shirt of Che Guevara, and I want to put it on with the red, the red shirt with the thing that says Che Guevara, hero. Remember, this is his idea too. That's a, what is that thing? That's a peacock, by the way. Remember this. Che Guevara believed in the same thing. He preached the same thing until Cuba was Marxist, and then he took homosexuals and killed them. Yeah. And by the way, Che Guevara hated black people too. So let's just remember this. So I see nothing but Greta Thunberg is nothing but another Marxist, nothing but another person that is trying to sneak her way in, so when the Marxists take over, she's okay. Okay, you can follow me on you can follow my podcast. Please listen to my podcast. It's on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Podcast Addict, Stitcher, YouTube, and Rumble. Visit my website at dumbassestalkingpolitics.com. And I know this was not that much of a Dumbasses Talking Politics short, but I had a lot of fun. This is Gene. You've listened to Dumbasses Talking Politics.